This week, the OTA created, well, a trap, and you need to be prepared for it. You might be queuing in with the mindset that priority is the way to go. And right now, this is no longer that meta because of what just happened in the OTA. So, in this episode of Three Decks, let's just re-examine it. Let's take a look at three easy or difficult, depending on how you want to look at it, decks that will make your life a lot easier so you know what to queue into right away. I'm going to give you one that's going to exploit the new version of the meta. I'm going to give you one that's going to put pressure in the new way now that priority focused play is going to take a back seat. And then the last one, I'm going to give you a very safe floor. And you know what? I think I'm going to start with that one also as well. Let's go ahead and start with deck number one. You've seen it before. It is a straight up is what it is Doom 2099 list. And I've gone back and forth, and I was really on the train for a while on making this deck cheekier than it is. And I ended up coming to the conclusion, and I've seen other people come to the same conclusion, that the cheeky line is not having a proper contestation on the final turn. And the final turn now is basically saying, you know it's going to be wide. You know it's going to be Doom or Aurora. But when you go only Galactus First Steps and you see that shadow onto the board, what I thought it was doing at first was telegraphing too much information to let your opponent know that you have a tall card. But the deck itself organically already shows the threat. So what it does is actually puts more indecision on your opponent versus, well, let me just play for both Doom and Aurora and where they could potentially be. Here's the lines. Now it actually creates more indecision in a good way. I do like that. I do also think that with all the different versions that I've gone and tested and tried, the ones that rock Invisible Woman First Steps really are the most consistent. So I'm plan on probably leaving her in here for quite some time. I went back and forth with Sandman mainly because Thing First Steps is an incredibly valuable card. And I think you swap between the two depending on the week. This week, it's Sandman, because there's still a lot of people experimenting with rocks and Ozymandias, and they want to do the 5+1 final turn. And because of the OTA, we're going to see a lot of cards also retested over the weekend with Gambit Horseman of Death. So you're going to see a lot more created cards. You're going to see a lot of cheap cards want to get played down, including the deck towards the end of the video, which will want to do exactly that. Sandman is here to help combat that. The rest of the deck is exactly pretty much what it's been. Chamber is still in contention with me, back and forth for that or the new Juggernaut. I'm leaning Chamber now, but not by much. Like either one of those, you'd be really solid and good to go. Iska is such an all-star in this deck, and I never thought I'd be running a Doom deck that would have this many 4-drops. Normally, it's been pretty lean, and I actually preferred a lot of the versions that weren't playing Iska previously. But if I'm running Invisible Woman, I have to be running Iska. There's just no doubt in my mind you're doing that because you're looking at minimum. Even if you play it on the final turn, it's a 4-12, yet alone if it goes 24-48 winning the lane. I mean, there's just no way you don't do that. So absolutely, I'd say you have to run that combination. And if you're going to run this version, Caliban has been making the cut for me because it's just consistent. It's just stats. It's just 311 stats. And because of that, I feel like you have to lean into it all the way. It's doing better than any of the Jack Flag variations. I'm totally about that life. Oh, and don't forget Drax, because Drax is just honestly absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to stay too long on this deck because we've talked about this deck before. It's just one that is still safe, and I want you to know that it's still safe. And if you want to go down that path, honestly, it's probably one of the safest things you can do, and you will feel good about your climb as you do it. But if you want to take a look at now the world that we live in with this new variation of Gambit Horseman of Death being a little bit more difficult, I'm going to say that we can revisit Shou Lao. I don't know if it's the right answers. I don't know if Shou Lao is safe now because negative Star-Lord is dead and because Gambit took a hit. But I do think you are going to see people experimenting with Shou Lao again. And the variation that I'm going to be experimenting the most with is what I'm calling Soul of the Dragon. It is leaning into your two different options for Scarlet Spider and Mysterio. It is also leaning into the line that I did feel was still the best, which was just having Joe Costa with Maverick and Scarlet Spider. And I see all of the other all-in other versions. You see a lot of top Infinite players also playing variations that are leaning in with Omega Sentinel, and they're running Prodigy, and they're running all of these awesome Andy, you know, to have a secondary play line if you don't draw your Show Lao. And I just personally have this feeling of, if you're playing a Show Lao deck, you're playing a Show Lao deck. It's like playing a Cerebro deck where you don't draw Cerebro. If you're playing a Show Lao deck that doesn't draw Show Lao, you're probably retreating anyway. The amount that you're playing out of, I don't think for the general population, keywording here, for the majority of people, you want to play a Show Lao deck because you want the Show Lao line. The more difficulty you throw in there, and uncertainty you throw in there with other cards that might not be necessary, because it gives you a second play line, and then you're looking at prioritization of your matchups, and it's going a little deep. It's going a little deep. And I want to take a version that's a little bit simpler. So I went down the just stick with Joe Costa variation, where I had done that previously in a previous version with the kind of W deck. That's what it was called. It took me a second there. And now going back to a more classic version that does run a lot more one drops. But honestly, it's one drops you really don't necessarily mind losing as fodder if you are in a Gambit matchup. Because sure, Athena could get hit, but think about it. If Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, Elektra, or Chavez all get hit, that's not the end of the world, because they're taking the damage for what is actually of matter. So I'm playing a different variation, which is play into volume. You've got the Mysterios on the board. You get two Mysterios out because you have the Mysterio Luke Cage Show Lao combination now. Hey, look, now you've got two targets that could be potentially hit. More bodies on the board. The Scarlet Spider doing the same thing. It's a 4-cost body, but there's two of them. It hits one, doesn't hit the other. Hey, you still win that one lane. Like, I think that we might be looking to combat Gambit, which I think will now be more difficult, and possibly difficult enough that it is safe to play Show Lao again. But if after a week we realize Gambit is still Gambit, we may have to back out of that, because Gambit's still Gambit. It's still destroying small cards. It's still going to be creating havoc on the ladder in a very specific way. But it did just get a nerf buff to a very key tool. And you're going to see people messing around in this space. So this might not be the deck that you choose to play, but it's a deck that you need to worry about, because if it gets too good, it's a little scary. It's the new Cerebro 3. And I got to, shout out KM, who brought it to my attention, where I had not thought about it with the Frigga nerf / buff, because it's a nerf power-wise, but it's a buff to this deck. And we used to have Frigga 3/3. And now that we live in a world with Gambit, I kept going, is there a way that with Frigga at 3/3, I don't need Bastion? And that was originally a conversation I had with KM on the Marvel Snapcast. Thinking about it and looking at the deck building, I'm actually disagreeing with that. And it's specifically because of Makari. Makari in and of itself, as a Gambit Makari stack to bounce that back with Bastion, is a guaranteed combo. I ended up needing to make some cuts from the deck. I ended up cutting Valkyrie. It's a great tech tool right now, but when you have this much power, you're pretty much in a good position. And I took another spin on it because I was back and forth between Gorgon, because right now Gorgon is very valuable because of all the rocks. I took a look at Cobra also, just because of all the rocks, and it's actually not as bad of an option as it was previously. But I decided to go US Agent as my 2-cost tech card. And the reason I did is because of the very first deck that I presented earlier. There's a lot of tech stacking. I mean, not tech stacking, tall guy stacking that's happening because of Doom 2099 decks and a lot of ramp cards. So getting to 7 base value, to 6, I should say, value out of Agent, US Agent, which then scales up as he gets buffed, And it won't reduce the Bastion because of Luke Cage in the very rare scenario where you have to play it on top of the same lane as the Bastion. I think that's pretty solid. Like, really, really solid. Your only card that doesn't necessarily get to that 3 power is Bast, but you have to play Luke Cage in this deck. And I tried figuring, it's a lot of 3 drops for Cerebro 3. Let me be clear. I know it's a lot of 3 drops. I went back and forth on finding different ways to do it. I tried doing it with just Frigga, no Bastion. And then you've got Makari, and then I took out Makari. I was trying Cosmo, and I was looking at all the different lines. But the core of this deck is the new Gambit, and the ease in which it is to get new Gambit to proc, because with this build of having Sentinels, Bastion cards, and Frigga, that's enough created cards to reliably get Gambit to proc off, and that's just an exponentially important value when you're destroying little cards and you know where most of them are stacked, and you can stack your US agent in the lane that has the bigger cards to try to keep up with that one, because you don't need to keep up as much in points in the lower point lanes because they might get destroyed. So I would really pay attention to Cerebro 3 this week. You're probably going to see it a bunch. I know I'm going to be playing this exact build quite a bit this weekend because it's a really, really solid deck. Let me be clear, though. I've said this before with Cerebro. It is one of the more difficult decks generally to play because it is about snap equity. It is about retreat equity. It is about understanding your lines. If you're looking for a plug and play, throw it in style deck, I would go with the Doom 2099. If you're looking for a challenge that could absolutely break your climb in such a positive way and you'll shoot up hundreds of SP, it's probably Cerebro 3. Out of those, that's where I would go. Now, Show Lao is the asterisk here because we don't know yet with new Gambit if it's going to be enough to be safe to play Show Lao. So people will be testing it. Therefore, you should be testing it too to see how you feel playing that version, which is why I have such a wide version of the deck. With it's basically a 12-card fill the board style build at this point because you're playing against Gambit and you're ready to play against Gambit. So that's what I've got for you this week. Also, what do you think of the new layout? Do we like the new layout? Do we like the old layout? Do you like the before and after? Either way, all the deck codes are down in the description below. Take one of the decks, give it a piloting shot, and let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thanks, everyone. As always, I'll see you next time.